All right, as this NPR article says, something that's been in the news a lot lately, as you all know, UK's Theresa May resigns, acknowledging failure to deliver Brexit. And of course, she teared up and was sad. And oh, the crime boss is sad. Oh no. UK Prime Minister Theresa May acknowledged defeat Friday and announced her resignation as leader of Britain's Conservative Party. And I quote, "It is and will always remain a matter of deep regret to me that I have not been able to deliver Brexit," said May, standing at a podium in the sunlight outside number 10 Downing Street in London. Intentionally or otherwise, May was summing up her legacy as most here see it today. She is a prime minister who spent nearly 3 years trying to honor the result of a landmark 2016 Brexit referendum, and despite a relentless effort, failed. In the summer of 2016, May thought she was the right person at the right moment. British voters had stunned the world and voted to take the UK out of the European Union. Then Prime Minister David Cameron, who had called the vote for political reasons, never thinking it would actually pass, resigned. Boris Johnson, the former mayor of London, emerged as a frontrunner to replace Cameron, but Johnson's own campaign manager publicly torpedoes his effort, leaving May the only viable candidate left standing. Many believe running for prime minister was May's first big mistake. And viable, I'll put that in quotations. This is supposed to be a non-biased media platform, NPR, but yeah, we'll see about that. Anyway, obviously a lot of stories coming out regarding this. If I could just refresh this page. Nigel Farage takes down another Tory government. Bye-bye, Theresa May. And it says Nigel Farage is the single most influential politician of the 21st century. And before he's done, he will have remade British and, by extension, European politics for the next century. I would actually say Ron Paul is far more influential, but I'll give Nigel Farage that anyway. The resignation of Theresa May marks the second Tory Prime Minister to fall because of Farage's steadfast support of an independent, sovereign United Kingdom. And of course, the Conservative Party in Britain is basically socialist. It's just, it's not as socialist as, you know, the laborers. But anyway, Farage understood from the moment that he entered politics that destroying the European Union was the ultimate goal. He knew that Britain had been completely betrayed by its entrenched and entitled political and aristocratic classes. He knew they cared nothing for the people they lord over as they cling to outdated ideals of their own inherent superiority. So, watching the collapse of the system of pelf and privilege that has paralyzed the recovery of the UK since the end of World War II, brought about in part by Farage's uncanny political instincts, has been one of the great pleasures of the last 10 years. People like David Cameron and Theresa May deserve their fates. The Eurocrats in Parliament, like the odious Dominic Grieve, will continue to prattle on about how they just know what's best for Britain, how a unified Europe is their future. But it isn't. A now not-so-silent majority of Europeans have come to realize that the EU they were sold is not the EU they have. In fact, it is the ultimate in anti-democratic institutions, designed as nothing more than to be a permanent unelected superstructure to ensure the power of those who erected it. Now, I must mention at the same time, it's absolutely absurd because it's this collectivist notion that you need to be led to the slaughter, or led, sorry, not to the slaughter, but that's what happens. And this notion that, the EU is undemocratic. Well, of course it is. It's, unelected bureaucrats at the ECB and unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. And it's obvious at this point that it's a globalist organization of criminals that are trying to control the narrative, control the populace under one giant umbrella, and be able to control divide and conquer agendas as well. Order out of chaos, where they clash people together on the ground, left and the right, and cause people to attack each other and focus on each other instead of the real enemies that are controlling them and trying to push them into complete dependency and servitude, stupidity and weakness, and of course, again, dependence. And on top of that, with Brexit is not just an example of how people's vote doesn't matter. It's an example of, even if democracy did work, well, it wouldn't, because it would just be ignored. People voted on something and it didn't go the way they chose or wanted it to go. So then they put it off for 3 years. probably 4 years now, and probably even longer. If it doesn't benefit them, they must have time to focus on a new agenda to play out so that they can make this situation benefit them in one way or another. And of course, they do the usual. They blame racism and nationalism. Personally, I think globalism and nationalism are basically the same thing. One's just smaller than the other, but it's still the collectivist notion that good ideas require force and that you need to enforce ideas via the will of a vast collective. This notion that 51% can rule the 49%, and that if the 49% disagree with something, well, tough luck. You are going to get extorted and forced to obey. And it's a never-ending story of greed and collectivism and control, and the governments and medias and propagated public school indoctrination camp systems that cause people to believe that they must have a mommy or a daddy controlling them in government. It makes sense when children spend most of their time in a public indoctrination camp government school, and then 2 or 3 hours a day with their parents, other than on weekends where they spend most of their time playing video games or watching shows that indoctrinate them further. It is no surprise that the era of government schools coincides with the era of complete dependency and weakness and stupidity. It's no surprise that the individual's IQ continues to diminish on a regular basis. And people are degraded and desensitized, and you see these videos of millennials that can't even open a can with a can opener. People are watching like in an audience. Whoa, you open that can? That's crazy. Think of how far we've fallen, folks, and I'm optimistic that this will end well long term. But when I see articles like this, here are the top contenders looking to become Britain's next prime minister, it just shows me, oh, well, one master that failed us and tried to enslave us has failed. So let's get another one. Maybe the messy hair guy, maybe the nice woman in the orangish red dress and skirt. Maybe this guy in a suit, he's bald. Or maybe this guy, he looks, well, like stock image of a politician. Anyway, maybe one of these guys can save us from the problems created by these guys in the first place. Britain's Theresa May announced her resignation, as it says, as Prime Minister on Friday morning, paving the way for a contest within the ruling Conservative Party to bring a new leader to power. How would you bring yourselves to power, folks? The announcement came after UK lawmakers refused to vote in favor of May's much maligned Brexit deal on 3 separate occasions since the start of this year. Fighting back tears, the outgoing Prime Minister said she had done everything she could to honor the 2016 EU referendum results. But with deep regret, she had been unable to deliver Brexit and lost the support of many within her own party. It's called just axing it. Do it. But, of course, government doesn't work on that basis. They try to perpetuate themselves and their own control complex. Who is likely to become the new prime minister? Former foreign minister Boris Johnson is seen as the bookmakers' favorite, having already received nominations for a leadership bid from the former Defense Secretary Gavin Williamson and Tory lawmaker Johnny Mercer. Johnson was one of the most prominent figures of the official Brexit campaign in 2016, with betting markets suggesting he has a 40% implied probability of winning the top job. And I quote, historically in conservative leadership contests, it's usually not the front runner, but the underdog that tends to win. Jordan Rochester, a foreign exchange strategist at Nomura, said in recent note published Thursday. Others tipped by betting markets include former Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab, with a 14% implied probability. Environment Secretary Michael Gove, former House of Commons leader Andrea Leadsom, and Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt each have a 7% likelihood of succeeding May, according to bookmakers. The likelihood of International Development Secretary Rory Stewart and Defense Secretary Penny Mordaunt securing the role stands at 4%, while Home Secretary Sajid Javid is given a 3% chance. But again, this is complete nonsense. This is bread and circuses for the masses. It's all theater. It's always been theater. And people say, well, I have a little bit of freedom on my farm as a cattle they are. They say, well, I have this grass to eat, so all is fine. Never mind the fences that surround us. I should just be happy with what I have. I got grass. I'm all good. Big smile, big smirk. Oh, where are all my friends going? And then they get led off by the shepherd to the slaughter that they voted in with a smile on their face. And by the time they notice what's going on, it's too late. So, again, I'm optimistic. I think we can replace government. I think we can overcome this. I think it's about evolving, not a revolution, but an evolution. But at the same time, seeing this stupidity and this circular paradigm of statism on, this cancerous cult of emotional irrationality we call collectivism, like an incremental frog boil, constantly growing and normalizing, we have big problems, folks. And it comes down to you as a responsible, free human being to break free from this. Speak for yourself, decentralize everything, rule yourself. Stop falling for these false idols, these mommies and daddies that you feel you need to solve the problems created by the mommies and daddies. Government isn't your parents. Government shouldn't be revered. Government shouldn't be loved. Government is an organized crime racket that only benefits from your dependence, your servitude, as they control you further and further all the time and rip away any funds that you have that you could have spent on something, I don't know, like feeding your children and helping yourself get a leg up in the world. Instead, they steal most of it to pay off the interest on the debt, blowing up babies overseas, etc., etc., etc. Oh, there's a new enemy, Iran. Let's go there. Oh, wait, they've been an enemy before as we, been part of coups and all that kind of stuff. Oh, well, they sponsor terrorism, kind of like, the Britain, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada have been part of for the last century, arming and funding more terrorists than anyone. And, of course, killing hundreds of millions of people over the last century. The biggest murderer, the MVP of murder, government. The MVP of pollution, government. The MVP of theft and kidnapping and torture, government. Maybe they can save us from extortion and murder and theft and kidnapping and pollution. Give your head a shake, folks. If you haven't already figured it out, you are the change you wish to see in this world and nobody else. Teach yourself that, teach your children well, and break free from this paradigm of complete collectivism and control. You are a free human being. Government cannot give you freedom. They can only take it away, and you have been fooled if you think otherwise into this collectivist paradigm. It's all part of a psychological operation to control the minds of the masses and therefore control the masses, period. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so heavily demonetized and censored by YouTube as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. The shadow banning is getting really bad, guys. Also, check our Bitcoin address right here on the screen or in the description below. We really appreciate it. And of course, check us out at the Red Pill Expo 2019. Of course, the great G. Edward Griffin and so many other incredible speakers will be there. Our link for that is below as well. And we cannot forget Mike Maloney's GoldSilver.com, which you can also find in the description. One of the greatest market and monetary historians out there. We really encourage everyone to check that out. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.
Wow.